Hello, today I want to go over the poem on children by Khalil Gibran. So, on children is part of a book of poems called The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. Khalil Gibran was born in the Lebanon, but he emigrated to the USA. So he is a Lebanese American poet, and this poem, The Prophet. The Prophet is Al Mustafa. Al Mustafa is a very wise man, and people come to him looking for answers to the problems they face in life. So the Prophet Al Mustafa is about to board a ship when a crowd of people gather to see him off, and then a woman, you read the poem, and a woman who held a babe against her bosom said, "Speak to us of children." So, a woman who wanted to know about how to bring up her child asked the Prophet Al Mustafa to speak to her on children. And he said, "Your children are not your children." So Al Mustafa instructs the people on children. And the very first statement he makes is a paradox. A paradox is a statement which is seemingly, it contains two opposite ideas. So here we have a statement which says, your children are your children, but at the same time, they are not your children. So, how can this be? How can they be the children of the parents and yet not the children of the parents? So, one way in which we can understand this paradoxical statement is by thinking that we are the children of the parents, but we are not exactly like them. We are not exactly like them. We are similar but not the same. So each child differs from every other child and also from its parents. So the child has its own desires, attitudes, and interests which will take it through life. So the parents may have given birth to the children. In that sense, the children are theirs, but at the same time, the children have to make their own way through life. So, if they are not the children of the parents, then what are they? They are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. So, children are born to the parent because all life forms, whether human beings or whether animals or whether plants or insects or fish, etc., all forms of life have a longing to create more life. That is why marriages take place and that is why children are born. It is because of this longing or desire of life to recreate itself that children are born, and therefore children are the sons and daughters of life's longing for itself. And the Prophet continues, they come through you but not from you. So children come through the parents. The parents are the medium through which the children come. But to illustrate this sentence, let us imagine a piece of wood. A piece of wood which has a hole in it. Now, if we put something through the hole, for example, a pencil through the hole, then the pencil will go through the wood. But if we break off a piece of wood, then we say the piece of wood comes from the parent block. So if something comes from something else, it shares many, it is almost the same. But if something comes through something, it is similar but not the same. So children the parents are the medium through which the children come into existence, right? And And the Prophet continues, and though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. So the children are with the parents, but the children do not belong to the parents. So commonly what happens is that parents treat children as their possessions. Now, if I possess something, for example, if I possess a ball pen, then I may do what I want with it. I can use it to write, I can throw it, I can do whatever. It's my possession. But children are not the possessions of their parents, they are independent entities, right? So, and the Prophet continues, you may give them your love, but not your thoughts. So, parents can show love and affection to the children, but they should not tell the children what to think. What to think determines our direction in life. What a person thinks determines his direction in life. Suppose a person thinks about a subject, any particular subject throughout the day, that is what he is interested in, that is what his life's direction will be on. So, the parents can nurture the children by giving them plenty of love and affection, but they should not tell them what to think. For, continues the Prophet, for they have their own thoughts. So children have their own desires, aptitudes, and interests, which are which are individual. It belongs those desires, aptitudes, and wishes. They belong to the children. So the Prophet instructs the parents. He says, "You may house their bodies, but not their souls." So you may house the bodies, physical bodies of the children. You may offer them shelter, food, and clothing, etc. But you cannot house their souls. The soul is the part of the person that animates. Now, it may be possible in the present to recreate a perfect plastic model of a human being, complete with all the blood vessels, nerve endings, brains, neurons, synapses, axes, dendrons, eyes. It may be possible today to reproduce a perfect human being in plastic, but it will not possess life. So, what will give it life is the soul. So, what animates the child is the soul. So, the soul of a child cannot be housed, it cannot be. So, the soul will determine whatever interests, wishes, and aptitudes the child has. That is determined by its soul, and that will take it through life. So the Prophet says, for their souls dwell in the house of tomorrow. So the souls of the children live in the future. Dwell means to live, house of tomorrow means the future. So children belong to the future, and therefore parents belong to the past. So, next, which you cannot visit, not even in your dreams. So, the parents cannot foresee what exactly the children will achieve in life. They may have a particular wish, they may have a particular desire, and they may even try to mold the child according to this particular desire. But what the child will eventually become is determined by its own wishes, by its own desires, by its own aptitudes, by its own interests. So it is the duty of the parents to nurture these desires, wishes, and aptitudes and interests so that the children may achieve what they want. So the parents cannot visit the future of the children even in their dreams. You may strive to be like them, but seek not to make them like you. So the parents can try to be like the children, they can try to be as enthusiastic, as energetic as the children, but the parent should not try to make the his child like himself. So, for example, if the parent is a doctor, what Khalil Gibran says here is that the doctor parent should not try to make the child also a doctor. And the Prophet continues, he tells the uh, parents, "You are the bows from which your children, as living arrows, are sent forth." So the parents are like the bows. Now, here, the Prophet takes an image from archery, the sport of archery. So, just as we have a bow and an arrow in archery, and the bow is bent and the arrows are released to hit a target, so parents are like the bows from which the children, as living arrows, are sent forth. And the archer sees the mark upon the path of the infinite, and he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. So the archer is God. God sees the mark upon the path of the infinite. What is this path of the infinite? Now, here we can take the example of the very poem we are reading. We are finding out a bit about how to raise our children because of what Khalil Gibran uh, wrote almost 100 years ago, more than 100 years ago. So we find out how to raise our children, and if we raise our children and the children hit a distant mark, then it is like a path. It is like a path. Or another example is how most science students depend on the findings of Newton, of Copernicus, of Kepler, of Galileo to carry on their study. So it's like a path of the infinite. This path didn't have a beginning, will not have an end. So it's like the path of the infinite. So the archer, that is God, sees the target which the children will hit. This target is on the path of the infinite, and the Prophet continues, he bends you with his might, that his arrows may go swift and far. So it is really an effort that the parents have to make to bring up their children. Uh, just as the bow is bent by the archer with all his might, then to release before he releases the arrow, parents have to strive with all their might, with all their strength, so that the may go children's life may go swift and far. Let your bending in the archer's hand be for gladness. For even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So the Prophet finally advises the parents to be glad when they have to make the effort to bring up their children. Let your bending in the archer's hands be for gladness. When God makes you strive with all your might to bring up your children, let it be glad, advises the Prophet. Because even as God loves the arrow that flies, even as God loves the children, so he loves also the bow that is stable. So he loves also the parents who are good role models for their children and who make an effort to bring up their children to contribute to society. So this is what the poem on children is about. Thank you.